The sun dipped low behind the western ridge, bleeding orange and crimson across the endless sky. The land stretched for miles raw, untamed and cruel. In that vast silence, only the wind dared to speak, whispering through the canyons like a ghost, mourning something long gone. Clara Emerson sat motionless against the rough wooden bars of a crude cage. Her once white dress was now the color of mud and dried blood, torn in places where thorn and claw had left their mark. Her hands, tied with leather cord, trembled from exhaustion, but not fear. That had passed days ago. What remained was something colder, harder, a quiet defiance that refused to die. It had been 16 days. She'd stopped counting after the 10th. The Blackfang Gang had snatched her during her father's westward expedition, attacking the stagecoach as it crossed a desolate pass near the Colorado border. Her father, Bartholomew Emerson, railroad baron and self-proclaimed king of steel, had begged and bled in front of her eyes before they shot him in the head. That image lived behind her eyelids, flaring every time she closed her eyes. She didn't cry. Not after that. Not once. The Blackfangs dragged her to a camp carved into the side of Black Hollow Mesa place no decent folk dared tread. Their leader, a man called Riker Boone, with a silver tooth and a gaze like a rattlesnake, kept her alive for a reason she didn't yet understand. But she wasn't naive. She knew men like him didn't keep women alive out of kindness. Boone would visit some nights, staring at her through the bars like a wolf, watching a deer lose the will to run. But he never touched her. Not yet. He said she was too precious to bruise. Said she'd fetch more clean. His words, not hers. Still, every morning she woke up and whispered the same vow beneath her breath. I will leave this place, alive, or not at all. On the 17th morning, the air was sharper, colder. A storm brewed on the horizon, the sky marbled with bruised clouds and the scent of coming rain. Clara watched as Boone argued with a scout, something about a missing horse and tracks leading north toward the high forests. She perked up, listening carefully, her fingers tracing the grooves she had carved into the cage floor with a broken hairpin. 17 marks, 17 chances to die, 17 she refused to take. That night, when the camp was drunk on moonshine and victory from a fresh raid, Clara heard something. A shift in the wind, a bird's warning cry, then silence. Moments later, a figure appeared just beyond the flickering firelight hall, cloaked in the shadows of pine and dusk. He moved like smoke, unheard, unseen, his face obscured beneath a low-brimmed hat, a rifle slung across his back. Not one of them. Her heart pounded. One of the guards, a drunken brute, called Maddox rose from his seat to investigate. He never made a sound. An arrow pierced his throat before he could shout. He dropped like a sack of wheat. Panic spread like fire. Men scrambled, rifles raised, shouting into the dark. But the stranger moved with uncanny grace, never lingering in one place, striking from angles no man could expect. By the time Boone lit the warning pyre, 3 more lay dead. And then, suddenly, he was there right in front of her. The warrior. Clara's breath caught in her throat. He said nothing, just knelt before the lock, inspecting it with hands steady as steel. A jagged scar cut down his cheek, disappearing into the collar of his worn leather coat. His eyes piercing grey, like the storm rolling in met hers for a moment. She didn't flinch. She didn't beg. I'm not afraid, she whispered. His voice was low, quiet as thunder over the horizon. Good, it's a long way to freedom. With a twist and snap, the lock gave way. He offered her a hand. She stared at I-30, calloused, strong. Then she took it. As he pulled her from the cage, the camp erupted into chaos again. Boone's voice bellowed from somewhere beyond, calling for blood. Gunfire cracked. Horses screamed. The warrior didn't hesitate. He lifted Clara onto his saddle and leapt up behind her, spurring the horse into motion. Bullets tore through the night, but none found their mark. They rode hard into the storm, the wind howling like a choir of the dead, and behind them, the cage burned in the firelight, its chains melting beneath the sunset. The storm broke as they rode, thunder cracking overhead like gunfire from the heavens. Rain fell in sheets, drenching the dusty trails and painting the world in streaks of grey and gold. Clara clung to the saddle horn, soaked to the bone, her hair whipping in the wind. Behind her, the stranger rode with unshakable stillness, one arm braced around her waist, the other holding the reins with effortless control. They didn't stop not when lightning split the sky, not when the horse nearly stumbled crossing a swollen creek, not even when Clara gasped in pain, her ribs throbbing from a fall she barely remembered. Only once they reached a narrow pass hidden by sheer rock faces did he pull the reins and slow the horse to a trot. The roar of the storm dulled, muffled by the high canyon walls. Here they were shielded for now. The man dismounted in a single smooth motion and helped her down. She nearly collapsed, her legs trembling from days of hunger and confinement. He caught her easily, cradling her as if she weighed nothing. She looked up at him, her breath catching once more. The firelight of the camp had hidden much, but now, under the muted light of stormy dawn, she could see him clearly. He wore a weather-beaten coat, leather worn soft by time and rain. A faded red band was tied around his upper arm, a warrior's token, once vibrant, now dulled like blood dried too long in the sun. His skin was bronzed from sun and wind, his hair black and tied at the nape of his neck. That scar still carved down his right cheek, but his eyes, those storm-grey eyes, held something far deeper than pain. They held ghosts. She tried to speak. Her lips trembled. You saved me." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he led her into a narrow cave just beyond the ridge, where the wind couldn't reach them. The air smelled of old stone and wet moss. He knelt by a small pile of wood, and with practiced precision, struck flint to spark. Soon, a fire crackled, warm and steady. Clara sat across from him, hugging her knees. "I don't even know your name." He looked at her, then glanced away, as if the weight of that question carried too much history. "They call me Grayhawk," he said softly. "Jesse Grayhawk." Clara nodded. "I'm Clara. Clara Emerson." He didn't flinch at the name, though most men did. Emerson was a name known across the frontier: wealth, railroads, power. Her father had carved through the land like a king laying tracks through kingdoms. She'd been the railroad princess once, but that life had turned to ash the day Boone's men pulled her from the coach. "Why?" she asked after a long silence. "Why would you risk your life for me? You don't even know me." Jesse didn't answer right away. He stared into the fire like it held something he couldn't look away from. "I knew your father," he said finally. "Briefly, years ago." Clara blinked. "You did?" Jesse nodded. "Before the war came through these parts, he hired me on so needed a guide across the Wind River Range. Paid well, treated me like I was invisible." She frowned. "Then why help me?" His eyes lifted to hers, dark, tired, hollowed by a lifetime of fighting. "Because I used to be like them, the ones who took you. I know what they do, what they take. And I've spent every day since trying to undo the man I once was." His voice cracked, just slightly. "I can't bring back what I destroyed. But maybe, I can save what they're trying to destroy now." Clara's throat tightened. Jesse turned back to the fire. "You should sleep. We ride at dawn." She hesitated. "Where are we going?" "There's a crossing through the mountain chidden. Leads to a valley no maps know. Safe land. My people once called it home. Few still do. You'll be safe there." A pause. Then, more quietly, "I give you my word." His voice was solemn, like a vow spoken to the earth itself. Clara lay down beside the fire, still damp, shivering not just from cold, but from the enormity of what she'd left behind, and what might lie ahead. That night, she dreamed of fire and chains and shadows that whispered her name. But each time the darkness threatened to pull her under, a hand reached for her, scarred, strong, silent. 3 days later, the mountains grew steeper. The trail thinned to a ribbon of gravel, snaking through pine and granite. They rarely spoke. Jesse seemed carved from stone himself, focused on every sound, every shift in the wind. But Clara watched him, studied him. When they stopped to rest near a mountain spring, she finally asked what had burned in her chest for days. "What happened to you, Jesse?" He looked at her for a long time, then spoke with the tone of a man who never expected to speak it aloud. I fought for both sides, blue coats and red flags, fought for the Union when they promised land, fought with my tribe when they came for it. I spilled blood for money, for survival, for vengeance. He shook his head. I lost a brother in the war, lost my mother to disease, lost myself, somewhere in between. Clara reached out, just to touch her fingers brushing the back of his hand. You're not lost now. His jaw tensed. He didn't pull away. No, he said, almost a whisper. But ghosts walk with me, Clara, every mile. She looked into his eyes, the way the pain lived there like an echo, and made a silent promise of her own. She would not run, she would not fear him, and she would not let him carry those ghosts alone. That evening, as they watched the sun dip behind snow-covered peaks, Jesse handed her a knife. You'll need to learn, he said, how to fight, how to live free. She held the blade, her grip shaky but sure. Freedom. The word tasted strange, distant, but real. And there, beneath the twilight, a vow was forged between a broken warrior and a girl who refused to break. Not chains, not silence, not the past. Together, they would fight for a new dawn. The sun rose heavy and red the next morning, more omen than blessing. It bled across the peaks like a wound, staining the snow and casting long skeletal shadows over the ridge. Jesse Grayhawk stood at the edge of the overlook, scanning the distant pines, silent as stone. He hadn't slept. Not really. Behind him, Clara stirred awake inside the small shelter they'd built from branches and canvas. She sat up slowly, muscles aching, the warmth of the fire barely lingering on her skin. But her spirit had changed, hardened, sharpened. She wasn't the same girl who had been dragged across dirt by the Blackfangs. There was steel growing in her now. Jesse saw something he feared and respected all at once. As she joined him by the ledge, she saw the look in his eyes. They're close, aren't they? She asked softly. He didn't look at her. Closer than I want. Clara's breath hitched. I thought we lost them in the canyon. We did. But Boone knows these lands. He won't give up. Not while you're still breathing. She glanced down at the trail they'd taken, barely visible now, wiped clean by the wind and snow. What does he want from me? She whispered. Jesse finally turned. It's not you he wants. Not really. It's the message. She furrowed her brow. What message? That even men like your father the powerful, the untouchable, can bleed. Boone's not just a killer. He's a symbol now. The law can't touch him. So he makes sure no one forgets what he's capable of. Clara swallowed hard. Then I won't give him what he wants. Her words surprised even her. Jesse's eyes softened. You've got fire, Clara, but fire needs direction, or it just burns everything in its path. He stepped closer, pulled a small pouch from his coat, and handed it to her. Inside, dried meat, flint, a small carved whistle, and the knife he'd given her 2 nights before. From here on, we travel off trail. Silent, fast. If we split, blow the whistle once. If you're in danger twice, if I don't answer, run. Don't look back. Clara nodded, the weight of the pouch like a promise in her hands. Later that day, the trail narrowed, weaving through towering pines, the forest floor thick with needles and silence. Jesse moved ahead, scouting every bend with the caution of a man who had spent years walking among ghosts. Clara followed close, each step more sure than the last. Hours passed. Then snap. The sound of a twig breaking behind them froze her blood. Jesse spun in a breath. His hand shot up. Signal, stop. Clara ducked low, heart thudding in her ears. He motioned again. 2 riders. Close. The wind shifted. Voices. Rough. Familiar. Boone's men. They crept closer, 2 of them. One tall and lanky. The other built like a barrel. Both carried rifles, scanning the trees lazily, unaware of the eyes tracking their every move. Jesse whispered low. I'll flank. When I move, take cover behind the fallen oak. She nodded. And then chaos. A hawk screeched overhead. The larger man turned. Too late. Jesse struck from the trees like lightning. One fell with a grunt. throat cut before he hit the ground. The other raised his rifle. Clara screamed. The rifle turned toward her. Bang! Smoke. Clara blinked. The second man collapsed an arrow through his eye. Jesse stood behind him, chest heaving. He turned to Clara. You all right? She nodded, though her knees trembled. First time you see death up close, he said gently. It tries to take something from you. She swallowed, walked to the fallen man, and stared. No, she said, voice steady. I think I already gave enough. Jesse watched her, something unreadable in his gaze. Let's move, he said at last. Nightfall, a fire, and a confession. They made camp deeper in the forest, beside a creek singing over stones. Clara washed the blood from her hands, her reflection in the water warped by ripples and moonlight. Behind her, Jesse built the fire, slower tonight. He looked burdened. You were fast today, she said, joining him. He didn't respond. She tilted her head. You've killed a lot of men. Too many. Do you remember their faces? Every single one. Silence settled between them. Then Jesse spoke again low, like he didn't want the stars to hear. There was a town, years ago, Dawson's Fork, a boy just 14. I thought he had a knife. Turned out it was a Bible. I didn't mean to. His voice broke. Clara reached out, placed a hand over his. You're not that man anymore. He looked up, eyes glassy. I still carry him with me. Then let me help carry him. In that moment, under the stars, something passed between them, not desire, not yet, but something deeper, an understanding. A quiet tether between two souls who had lost too much to name. The next morning, Jesse woke to hoofbeats. Too many. He jolted Clara awake. Ride. Now. They barely had time to grab supplies before the forest exploded in gunfire. Boone had arrived. The Blackfangs, half a dozen strong, swarmed the trees like wolves. Clara and Jesse mounted fast, bullets tearing through branches, bark shattering like glass. Split! Jesse shouted. No. I'll draw them. You head west toward the valley. Follow the river until it forks. Clara's eyes burned. I'm not leaving you. You have to. She hesitated, then blew the whistle once. He nodded. I'll find you. And then he was gone, vanishing into the trees. Rifle drawn, the hunter turned prey. Clara rode, tears streaking her cheeks, the wind howling behind her like a scream. She didn't look back, but in her heart, she whispered a vow. If I live, I'll find you again. And if you fall, I'll bury your ghosts beside mine.